My father's mother, my grandmother, Mary A.D. Taylor, her father was a mulatto from down near Front Royal, Virginia. His name was William Henry Clay Douglas. He was the son of a slave owner down there near Front Royal. And when he got a certain age, like 9 or 10 years old, he began to take on the characteristics of his owner, his father. And that happened a lot of times during that time, and they usually sent him away from the plantation. And they gave him a few bucks, and he was like 9 or 10, 11 years old when he left there. And he left the Front Royal area, I guess stopping and working wherever he could on farm, whatever, and wind up in Clark County, Virginia. And that's how my people on my father's side got here. And he was a mulatto, and he did have a few bucks. He was so white looking that what was it, 30s? He got sick, and the hospital was right over here on Congress Street, and they put him in a room with a white man, and his wife, who was my great grandmother, she was my complexion, or maybe darker, because then they wanted to get as much of the white blood out and try to blend. And she came and started taking care of him, taking care of his patting, make sure he need anything, for fluffing up his pillow and everything. So the nurse asked him, say, "Oh, do you work for this man?" And she says, no. She was really insulted about this. She said, "That's my husband." And when they found that out, they took him from the room upstairs and put him down with the African Americans. That's just how white looked. Now, I got aunts and uncles and things still remember this man. I was a little too young to remember him. And I've asked them questions about him, And, so that's how as far as the Taylor part. And through our family, you can see the color popping up, in different, how that goes. Mm-hmm. But, that about take care of the story on that side of the family. He was born around 1844, I think, or something like that. I gotta check that out. But this is before John Brown's raid and before, civil. That generation, man, it's close to our generation. I mean, if you really, really want to look at it. And there was so many things going on that our people were here, And my grandfather, talking to my father, they used to talk about like those people that talked, that was like maybe young men when John Brown's raid and the war, they didn't say a word. They kept closed mouthed about the thing, because they didn't want the owners and the people that they were slaves on and all that type of stuff to think that they really was glad that John Brown came. They talked about John Brown, blah, blah, but you know how that goes. They had to do it that way. But he said that when they first heard of this thing, this is what his father.
The John Brown raid.
Yeah, this is what his father was telling, him and my grandfather now, that they thought he was black. And they thought it was one of those Nat Turner type of situations, So African Americans got real quiet. When they got to themselves, after the doors were locked and the windows, then they would, whisper about it, And that was interesting, And even after it was over, they didn't talk about the raid, because most of them still stayed on these farms that they were enslaved. And these people around here hated John Brown because, he came in and killed the mayor and did all this stuff, And so they kept quiet for generations. And another thing I noticed about that, from my great-grandfather to my grandfather, all passed, it's good that they didn't let us know a lot, because we would have had all that slavery stuff embedded in us, and it would have prevented us from doing. They concentrated on schools, churches, and they really stressed about being patriotic. You can see that all through, I'm talking about Jefferson County, I'm not going nowhere else. You can see that all down through the history. We had at Harper's Ferry a hero of War 1812 named John Butler. he died down in Harrisburg. That's a story people don't know too much about. That was the War of 1812. And of course, we know we got Spanish-American War veterans. We lived in Dogtown with this man that was a Spanish-American vet and a World War I vet. And these people lived in our neighborhoods, you know, and they stressed the same thing. These old Spanish-American War veterans and World War I veterans, they got us at the right age. They taught us how to march, how to salute. And when they were in France, World War I, people would ask them, why do you fight for a country the way you're treated? When you go back home, you're going to be treated, you know. And they said, because we are Americans. And that one phase, those World War II soldiers used it, Korean War, which I was in, Korean War veteran, that's what they kept implanting in us. And as you know, African Americans have never, ever turned their back on this country. They didn't blow up the federal building in Oklahoma or do what this boy did with the marathon. Never. We stayed, I mean, we have been as loyal as we can get.